So here we have in the background here the St. George Cape Lighthouse. This is probably late 1800s, just looking at the close. Now this lighthouse was built in 1860, we're told, and it was in use until the 1880s, so not for very long. And this lighthouse has a very strange story that goes along with it. Now, this was sent in to me, this lighthouse, sorry guys, losing my mind, by Sean Joe through my Facebook page. So thank you very much for that, Sean. Now, where are we? He also sent in some photos. He went down and had a look himself and got some photos for us. So thank you, Sean. Now, this is just one thing I'll just quickly touch on. A lot of the people who live there died. They all had these strange accidents and died. But let's read this. So due to the number of shipwrecks occurring near Cape St. George, it was decided that a lighthouse was vital for the safe navigation of coastal shipping. However, egotism, laziness, and insufficient research and consultation were to have dire consequences. Two wrongs don't make a right. In 1857, the colonial architect Alexander Dawson and an assistant surveyor, E.F. Millington, investigated Cape St. George for sites suitable for a lighthouse. Unfortunately, Dawson's choice of sites were largely based on the ease of construction rather than the efficient function of the lighthouse. Without the input of any maritime expertise, the chairman of the pilot board authorised the first of Dawson's site options almost immediately. The project was plunged into controversy despite glaring deficiencies in the planning stage. Sorry, this is a little bit hard to read. And disagreement by a majority of the board. The lighthouse was commissioned on the 1st of October 1860. 38 years and many arguments later, a replacement lighthouse shone its beam from the northern side of Jervis Bay at Point Perpendicular. So I'll show you Jervis Bay. It's basically like a big bay. There's two, points, and they built this on the south one. And apparently it didn't work, and it was all bad. And the story will unfold. Even unlit, the lighthouse caused navigational problems, especially on the moonlit nights when the golden sandstone tower glowed in the dark. Near the turn of the century, explosive charges were used to reduce the tower and part of the keeper's quarters to rubble. So they blew it up. Okay, so where are we? Now this is the plaque at the site, the rubble. These are all the boats that wrecked. So I just want to give you this as well, because this is interesting. In colonial times, the transport of people and goods relied heavily on shipping. Lighthouses aided navigation by marking treacherous sections of coast, but with large numbers of ships travelling in virtually all weather conditions, shipwrecks were frequent. Shipwrecks usually occurred in the most terrifying circumstances. Dark and stormy nights, huge seas, or heavy fog made abandoning ship or rescue by other ships extremely hazardous. Lightkeepers were often the first to assist passengers and crews of wrecked vessels. From 1875 to 1885, 198 vessels were lost off the New South Wales coast. Of the 2,563 passengers and crews involved in these wrecks, nearly 10% lost their lives. The wreck bay coast acted like a trap for ships sailing too close to shore. Once inside the bay, there was no room to manoeuvre and ships were driven ashore. In 1886, the number of shipwrecks occurring in the wreck bay area prompted a reader of the Sydney Morning Herald to describe the coastal shipping as a scheme for manufacturing widows and orphans. I just found that a very interesting line. And what I also find interesting is this is on the site of the old lighthouse that was built in 1860 and ran till 1880s. But this is talking about 1870s to 1880s. I don't know. bit weird, like why was it built if all these wrecks were from the 70s? Obviously they were happening earlier, but it doesn't say anything which would be helpful, because that would be the reason that they built the lighthouse in the first place. But I digress. Okay, let me just pull something up here. Sorry, I've got stuff everywhere. All right, Cape St. George Lighthouse was a lighthouse that stood near Jervis Bay. It was located 3 kilometres north. Constructed in 1860, it was active until 1889. The tower was destroyed between 1917 and 1922 to avoid confusion in daylight. Okay, so the last story said it was to avoid confusion in moonlight at night time because it shone. This one says the tower was destroyed between 1917 and 22 to avoid confusion in daylight. Okay, so I just want to... Okay, and this is from the plaque at the actual site. Even unlit, the lighthouse caused navigational problems, especially on moonlit nights, when the golden sandstone tower glowed in the dark. Near the turn of the century, explosive charges were used to reduce the tower. Okay, so that's one story. Now if we go here, it says the tower was destroyed between 1917 and 1922. That's not really at the turn of the century, is it? 20 years after. That's a fifth of the way in. Different time. Okay, and this one says it was destroyed because it was destroyed because to avoid confusion in the daylight. So one says daylight, one says night. One says destroyed by explosives at the turn of the century. One says destroyed between 1917 and 1922. Now let's have a look at how this one says it was destroyed. And also the whole thing about what they're saying is that this was built in the wrong spot. They paid $5,000 or £5,000, sorry, in 1856. That wouldn't have been a small amount of money. That would have been a big wad of cash. In a new, a very new colony, Australia, 50 years old. They just get someone to do it, and apparently he just completely stuffs it up, puts it in the wrong spot, and there's nothing about ships, crashing or anything bad happening, but it's just all, it was in the wrong spot, it's bad, 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 and so therefore they went and built another one. Now, I'll show you that photo again later, but they said that he picked this area for the ease of construction. Okay, so keep that in mind as well. Now, 1864 to 1893, oh, here we go. There were 23 ships wrecked on the south coast of New South Wales in the vicinity of Jervis Bay. The light was eventually replaced in 1899 by Port Perpendicular Light in Port Perpendicular. Now, after commissioning... Okay, so down here it says, after the commissioning of the new light, it was considered that the confusion of having two towers in close proximity to one another would be hazardous to navigation in daylight, especially during foul weather. So now we've got daylight, foul weather, moonlight, glows in the night, what else? As a result, the Cape St. George Tower was unceremoniously used from 1917 to 1922 for target practice by the Royal Australian Navy, and destroyed. So we've got two different stories here, for starters, and the whole story that £5,000 in 1856 was given to someone to build this lighthouse, and they built it in the wrong spot. It stood for another 30 years, and then it apparently stood barren or was blown up, we're not sure, and the Navy then started taking pot shots at it. Interesting story, right? So this is where it was built. You can see that's not flat land. This is out on a cape out near the, that's like a cliff with the ocean out there. I'm not sure if you would call that, easy to build land, because there's no roads or anything out here. You can't see anything. It's not close to a township or anything. But let's have a quick look on Google Earth just so you can get an idea of what I'm trying to say here. Okay, so here we are, country New South Wales. That's an area that we had a look at yesterday, and the towns that we were looking at are all in this region. This is Jervis Bay. Now this is the point here where they the first lighthouse that they then destroyed. There it is there. Okay, the other lighthouse they built is across the way here. That's the island, sorry. There. Okay, this is on a cliff as well. There it is there. Now, you can see there's some towns here and here. He said he built it there for the ease of construction. That's really a nice big flat piece of ground here. Even though it's on a cliff, look at that, it's very flat. Nice, easy ground, flat all the way, easy to get stuff across it. Because obviously he had, horse and cart pulling all these sandstone bricks. There are sandstone quarries in the region, by the way, and that doesn't necessarily mean that it was built when we said it was built. Out here you can see this is pretty much, it's not so flat. I'm not sure if you can kind of see, but it's a lot more rocky here. That other one was more like a plateau. This is, you can see, this is kind of a bit of a mound here, and then it falls away, sloping bits. And it's no closer to towns than the other one. This is just a little, so just in there, it's like that's not a town. That's I'm not sure, a navy base or something. So you can see this lighthouse here. The furthest town would have been Vincentia if that was still there. So, as far as travel, that looks like an easier place to build. Yet they tell us that he chose this place because it was an easier place to build. He was looking for the easy way out, the easy job. So this story does not make sense. So let's just go back and have a look at some photos now. All right, now these photos, a couple of these photos were actually sent in by Sean, Sean Pearce. I think I called him Sean Joe before. That's his middle name's Joe, but Sean Pearce, he went down and had a look at this place at the St. George Cape Lighthouse. And like I said, the Navy took pot shots at it, or someone blew it up, something happened, and there's just rubble everywhere, basically. So this is a piece of the rubble. This is Sean's photo. Nicely carved, just lying around. This is another sign, obviously, designed by the colonial architect Alexander Dawson and built in 1860, so it also only took a year to build. And the three-storey lighthouse was built on sandstone blocks quarried near the present-day Jervis Bay village. The tower was 61 feet high, 18.5 metres, with 8 rooms at ground level. The floor was timber and cast iron girders held up by roof stone, flagged, covered with asphalt. Now, another thing that Sean mentioned is he said that this, as you can see here, that it says the tower was 61 feet high. Is that right? 8 rooms. Okay, let me remember what he said. Basically, what he said is that because it was built on a big cliff, that the height that they got off it, so this must be 18.5, must be the total height, I think. 3-storey, because obviously 3 stories isn't going to be 18 metres, is it? No. But yeah, so what Sean said is that the amount of height that the lighthouse actually gave, all that it did was give an extra 3-mile radius. So he said that the radius was around 18 miles, and then after the lighthouse was constructed, it went to 21 miles. Now, that doesn't make a lot of sense either, does it? Why would you build that just for an extra 3 miles? If you needed a light, why wouldn't you just build it in a 1-story, sort of structure if you're already up there? Because once you're 21 miles off the coast, you're not going to be crashing your boat on the coast. And this was built, they tell us, to stop boats wrecking on the coast that is actually called the wrecked coast. So, all this work for 3 extra miles, 18 miles out. It's a very strange story of a lighthouse, isn't it? Okay, here's another picture of Sean's. This is the construction. He said it was definitely made from big bricks, not red brick. So we can obviously see that here. These are sandstone. They probably are from the area, natural. Just depends who built it and when, because the story of the 1860s has got a few, a few question marks about it. Here it is. You can see it's all very nice work. It all looks pretty old, whether it's just been left to ruin basically. Now it's a historical site in a national park, which they all are, aren't they? There's a nice one. So that's what's left. They just blew it up. They just blew it up. They didn't. And this was in the 1920s, it said. So just after World War One. So instead of reusing all this nicely cut stone, they just blew it up. I don't know. It's a strange story. Here's all the rubble, as you can see. Now, just looking at that, there's not a lot of mortar in there, is there? See? I mean, there's not. Have they even got mortar joints, do you reckon? I'm not sure, but it looks like you can see it's double walled. And is it? It almost looks like there's something. Way too close there. Yeah, that's it. Just sort of see double walls. I'm not sure if that's filled in the middle of the walls, but these, yeah, no, they do have mortar. It's just not coming right out to the front. But yeah, so then they just took pot shots and blew it up. There it is again. This is the old photo. Now that does, I know most of the old photos were, photography was new, I guess. Well, it wasn't new in the 1880s, really. It was developed discovered or invented in 1827. But they just all look so set up, but, a lot of photos do, so that doesn't necessarily mean anything. Okay, so it says 1870s. So this is 10 years after this was built. And see, look at the terrain. It's not flat. It's quite, a lot of rock out there. It's kind of quite ruggedish if you're looking at getting all these stone bricks up there. You've got to bring them in on horse and cart. And it looks like that may be built up on a bit of a foundation, so it wasn't even built on level ground. So that doesn't look like an easy place to build a lighthouse. And there's an aerial shot as well. You see, it's all just... That's a strange story. So yeah, thanks Sean for letting me know about that one and getting down there, getting the photos and yeah, sharing your info with us. Hope you all enjoyed that one, guys. Some old buildings from country New South Wales, the same style that you see all over the world. So it's what's going on? Do we all have just one architect school maybe? Don't know. And then a very strange story of a lighthouse that was cost £5,000 in the 1850s, built in the wrong spot. No one checked. They just built it. I mean, and in a year, and that wouldn't have been an easy construction back, especially where it is out in the middle of nowhere in the 1850s. And then it was in the wrong spot. Left it there 30 years, blew it up, built another one on the other side in a much flatter, easier place to build. So, what do you think, guys? Are we being told the truth on this one? Or is it something else going on worth a bit more investigating maybe? All right, leave me a comment. Let me know. Thanks for spending some time with me, guys. Please leave me a like as well. Share this video. Hit the bell if you want to be notified of any new videos I upload. And, of course, if you want to support this channel, there is merchandise and other links down in the More section and my Instagram and Facebook page as well. Alright guys, have an amazing day and I shall catch you on the next upload. Bye for now.